to the Direct Her Business TV talk show. In today's episode, we will be discussing grief management and how has it changed during the COVID-19 period. I am your host, Risha Ferdinand, and today I have with me two beautiful, awesome women. We have just Troia, well, that's her name, and then we have Miss Eleanor Ward. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Great. So before we even continue, tell us a bit about who you are so at least our audience will know exactly where this information is coming from and that it's qualified information. Go ahead, Troya.
Hey, again, Risha, thank you for having us on. This is a really important conversation, one that we don't have quite often or at all. And my name is Troia Butcher, but I'm the owner, founder of Just Troia LLC, as well as the Good Grief Healing Center. And what qualifies me, in 2019, I had several deaths right behind each other. And again, I am an ordained minister, and I tell everybody I understood death, but I never understood grief until I lost my mentor, my grandmother, and my best friend within a 6-month period. And the repast wasn't good enough. After the food was after we ate the food, I had to begin to claw my way back into life, which was what does life look like for me now? And in the process, I wrote a book called Soul Ties, Letters of Love, Learning to Live Through the Loss, because that's the key, right? Is to live again after this difficult period. I believe that experience is the best teacher. And what we share with others, hopefully will pull others out of the quicksand that can be grief. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you again.
Welcome. And what about you, Eleanor? Tell us a bit.
I am a certified life strategies coach. I help people with loss of family members or loss of a child and trauma-related issues. I've also worked in mental health for a very long time as well. So I have kind of a connection all the way around of understanding a variety of different ways that death or grief and different things can happen in your family and in your household. So that's what I try to do, as well as, I forgot, of course, 2006, I lost my husband and my son in a tragic car accident, and it left me and my youngest son we were the survivors of the accident, and to kind of trudge forward without a clue of knowing what we were supposed to do. So that's what it was much later down the line. It was around probably 2018, 2019. I said, you know what, I see so many people out here struggling and being told the most ludicrous things to do to get their lives kind of jump started. So that's what made me say, you know what, I'm going to jump in here and do the best I can to put them on a better path.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ladies, for being transparent and, sharing of your own personal experiences and encounters with grief. And because it's women like you and your voices is what helped the rest of us go through our processes and our seasons faster and a bit better. We're talking about grief management in this COVID period. And with COVID came a lot of restrictions in terms of you are restricted in terms of movement. You had less movement. You're unable to go and embrace your loved ones during their period of loss. How do you see the whole grief management thoughts and the way we as a people generally manage grief? How has it changed? Do you think it's for the better or for the worse? Who wants to go first?
I personally think it's heading towards the better. It's a little slow chugging train, but it's heading toward the better. Our people, and let's just be honest, we tend to stuff things as far down as we can. We don't manage anything. We eat a lot to manage things, and we think food and a little camaraderie takes the place of real conversation. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody get me wrong. That's amazing when you can have that time of reflection and laugh and remember someone. But like I told a friend of mine after my husband passed, it was like about 3 weeks after my husband passed, and I was at the house and I was kind of broken down, and he said, "Where'd your family go?" I said, "They were gone 2 days later." Nobody's going to hang out with the grief-stricken person. That's what people don't get. It's not anything wrong with you, but they can't take it. They can't handle it because, especially in our people, in our race, we just don't tend to do that. So it's kind of like, I love you, I hugged you, call me if you need something. And people don't get when you are in the middle of battling fresh death, fresh grief. You may have just buried them or cremated them or whatever the case may be. You're not really thinking about calling whoever said to call them. And so I think, the conversations we have to have now is, what are we going to do? Because we're still under a lot of restrictions. Like I said, when COVID first happened, I lost my mom, couldn't go see her, couldn't be with her, didn't have those last moments with her, but I couldn't let that haunt me for the rest of my days. There's somebody out there that is haunting, because that's going to bother them the rest of their days. So they're going to need help to understand, I've got to manage this grief. I've got to figure out a better way to deal with this versus just saying, oh, I didn't get to be with my mom. And sometimes you get into that victim mode of what you missed. Nothing was in our control. So a lot of people have lost greatly and never had that chance. Even if you don't get the last moments, you didn't even get to see them again. I never saw my mom again. Wow. And so that can be heartbreaking, and it is heartbreaking for me as well, but it can be really heartbreaking for, say, someone that was just every Sunday dinner, every constant shopping spree, they're with their mom a lot. Imagine that. Or your mom's your kid's babysitter or something, and you don't even get to have a last look at them because COVID would not even let you look at the person. You could not do it. The funeral homes weren't allowed to, or any of that. So for those people out there, I completely understand, but I'm hoping that this brings about the better conversations of grief and how we need more than that dinner, because now the dinner is eliminated. How you handling your grief now? Now there's no repast. What you gonna do now? And I think a lot of people are seeing, without that element in our community, nobody's calling, nobody's saying anything. And that's dangerous, because that's when that person will hurt themselves, or that person will do something that's unexpected. So we've got to start having the conversations.
Wow. What about you, Troia?
I would agree with Eleanor, but I'll just take it a step further. First, we need to even acknowledge that there's a thing called grief, because our community does not. And when I say our community, just in case, African American community, let's call it spade, let's call it out. We don't talk about it, and we don't. And I don't even think people understand that the thing that they're feeling is grief. You know what I mean? Because and like I said, I borrowed this phrase because I was in a training a couple of months. Well, in the heat of the pandemic, I went to a training, and so the definition that they gave is grief is the loss of a person, place, or thing that we're emotionally attached to. So we have been emotionally attached to having freedom. To get in your car and drive. We've been emotionally attached to not having to wear a piece of fabric around our face. Yeah. These are all things, and then so there's a lot of loss, compounded loss, and then when you lose somebody through this pandemic, it makes it even worse. And because I think we said it one time before, we do a horrible job of grief in America. Horrible job. And I think now, I agree with Eleanor, hopefully people will now begin to understand that there's this thing that's called grief and loss, and that there are ways of doing it. We're not the pioneers. At least I won't say I'm a pioneer, and I've borrowed, and I'm borrowing from as much as I can possibly get. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at grief and loss, the people that are talking about grief and loss don't necessarily look like us. And because we're so conditioned to get over it. And our getting over it looks like mental health, but we say they're special. That's our word, or they're touched in our community. We never say, let's get to the root of what this is. Somebody has had a significant loss, and we're not talking about it. Now I think like I said, I think Eleanor is right. I think we're starting to get on the right track, because there are those of us that's like, wait, this isn't a normal loss. This is a huge grief. It is community wide, and I think people need to recognize that. And it's different. But now we can handle it because there's a technology that allows us now to talk with people just like you're doing right now. So I think once we acknowledge it, particularly in the African American community, this is grief, sugar. You lost a whole lot in the span of not even a year, because nurses and doctors, I mean, their patients would come in and literally be gone within hours.
Yes.
So you have this sort of, it's compounded. And then so I think hopefully now, and I know that one of the clinics that I talked with last week, they're beginning to understand now that they have to do something for their staff, and they're having a healing year, a year of healing, which I think is amazing. But they recognize that this is grief. This is a lot.
So how can we, ladies, identify when someone is grieving? What are the triggers? How can we tell? Do we automatically assume someone is grieving because we are aware that someone or something that they had is no longer with them? Or do we, if we didn't know anything about that person's history, how can we tell someone is grieving? What are the signals?
I think it's in their behaviors, and here's the thing. Here's the thing, and I think Eleanor might say the same thing, because it's different for I can say a lot because my mind has shifted to say or to look for the conversation when I'm talking to somebody, or if it's a repeated conversation, or if they go from 0 to 50 and you're talking about mom, or you're talking about dad, or you're talking about a specific thing, and they just go from they're okay and then they get really emotional at the same time, or they get, I mean, so it really is just kind of having a conversation with someone. But you can also look at the way their posture is as well. It's hard to do now because everybody's in COVID, but some of the behaviors I remember I've worked with those who are also in recovery, some women who are in recovery, and one of them loved them dearly, and I would notice it when they didn't get their way, they just throw a temper tantrum. I'm like, you're a whole grown person, but they were stuck at the loss. And then it took me a second to realize, oh, okay, so you have this toddler navigating this grown person, so we need to go back and figure out what that is. But again, I think it's we have to give people grace to understand what's going on, because the behaviors that are exhibited are triggered by something else, and we need to be able to understand, okay, there's something else going on here. What is it? And not be so judgmental, because we can do that. They're just being extra. They're not. They have some stuff going on that we don't. That's going to. You're expecting Humpty Dumpty. You're expecting all the king's horses and all the king's men to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but Humpty can't get back together again unless, like she said, there's some conversation that needs to be had.
To add to what you're saying, I could attest to that. My husband's brother passed away before COVID, the year before COVID, which would have been 2019. In 2020, my husband also lost his job. So his mind, now, I am just an accountant and business person, so I know nothing about identifying when someone is grieving. However, there were moments where he would go really quietly and then he cries and stuff. So it automatically told me, okay, he is crying over not his brother, but because of his loss of his job. But in speaking with you ladies now, I understand that even loss of a job is also part of grief. So thank you for that information. But nevertheless, over 2020, his mental state became compromised. I don't know if that's the word to use. And eventually his body started to react. So in August of 2020, he had his first anxiety attack. Now, we thought it was a heart attack because we literally saw his heart raise, his t-shirt raise, his heart came that high, the height of a woman's boobs, and drop back down. And then we just see like literally bumping this high. So automatically, we thought it was a heart attack. So I remember grabbing my daughter and telling her, get your father dressed. And while I'm getting dressed, because it was after midnight that happened, our son was asleep. So while that happening, we are praying. So we are praying, and and I'm trying to keep everyone calm whilst I literally shaking in my boots, calling on God, and trying just to hold everything together, because I know at that moment the strength was literally on me at that moment. Because my daughter was looking at me, my husband is looking at me because I'm seeing the fear in his eyes. But thank God, when we got to the hospital, they said it was an anxiety attack, etc. But that was the first of many anxiety attacks that followed. So in speaking with the doctor, he said, we need to treat with the root of this thing. I knew what the root was, but my husband was in denial, or if not denial, he didn't want to admit what the root was. But nevertheless, it led to that, a series of anxiety attacks, excessive headaches, etc. So he's now on medication. He's now in the US for some time away, but also a job opportunity. So he's much more in a relaxed state. Within a week of being there, he told me he had an anxiety attack. I wasn't there to help him through this one. But he told me he remembered me, hearing my voice, telling him what to do. Every time he gets anxiety attack, I would take him through a very vivid and descriptive scenario. I would literally walk him through a story as though I'm reading a story for my son. The sun is bright, the water is touching your feet, and you can hear the children's voices. I'm literally telling a story while he's having an anxiety attack to bring him back together. But he's there now, and he's doing much better, but he's only there less than a month. But seeing him, I'm seeing him in a different light, and I'm seeing him looking happy and etc. But it has been a journey. And I thank you all so much for this, because you are now able to tell me grief wasn't just when his brother passed away, but even the loss of his job also had an impact on his physical health. So Eleanor, I know you had a scenario where you even lost, someone just like Troia, but you lost your husband and your son. Can you walk us through that, and what lessons you learned in particular in that grieving period?
In 2006, when I lost them, the first lesson I learned was abandonment is real. And I hate to put that out there, but it needs to be out there. Yeah. As long as you show up and you take a few pictures and you let people know. I called her once, even though I had been with a man for 20 years. I had lost him from 14-year-old kids. Like, that's a significant chunk of time with someone, significant chunk of time to be raising a child, and to think a call or two mends everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
And the few people I did call, I actually did call a few people. Call me. I actually did call a few people, and I'm gonna put this out there. I was put off. It was like, you need to talk right now. Oh, I'm busy with this, or I'm doing that. Can you call me back tonight? And I would actually spend the time, because I needed desperately someone. Well, let me call them back tonight. They said call at 8 o'clock. And I remember calling one of the people back, and it was a friend of my husband's who was like, I am right there for you. And he goes, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? And that stuck so hard with me. And I thought, absolutely nothing. And he probably won't even remember the way he was acting, but I remember him saying, I've got to bathe my daughters. Kind of like, why are you wasting my time? And I remember on the phone, I said, you told me to call you.
Wow.
And then I had to let that go. I didn't call anybody else after that. It went from situations like that to, if you did call someone, then you're getting preached at with the Bible. then you're getting told the people are in a better place. None of those are things that help you manage your grief or what you want to hear. Right. I had my first official panic attack probably, I would say, about 7 days after my husband and son passed. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't think I was quite having a heart attack, but I really thought something was going down.
Yeah.
And it was shocking because I thought, I don't panic. I'm bigger than this. What is this? And so once I called, the only person I could think to call was my friend's dad, because he was friends with my dad. My dad wasn't feeling too great at the time, and he was kind of going through it. So he talked me through it, and then he said, we're going to call your dad anyway. And I called my dad, and my dad just sat on the phone and simply said, I don't know what a panic attack is. I'm not of this generation. We didn't have those. We just kind of muddled through. He said, so I'll just talk to you. And that's what he did. And up until the day he died, when that would happen, I could call my dad. And he, you do beautiful painting a picture, by the way, but he would just talk about stuff. And that was just, I think just hearing his voice and knowing, and he would say while he was doing it, you know, I'm trying, how you feeling? You're doing a little bit better. And I'd be like, yeah, Dad, just keep talking. Because my attacks were full blown, can't breathe, tears running down my face. And it scares you to death. And you have absolutely no control when they might come upon you. There's no precursor to say, oh, I might have a panic attack. You know, like someone that has asthma would be like, I feel like I can't breathe. And they might know they're attacking them. You don't know. You might be sitting at your desk going, okay, I'm feeling strange. And so that may be what was happening with your husband. That it just overtakes him. So I have those pretty regular the first few years. And then after that, they kind of subsided. I don't think I'll ever not have them. I'm brave enough to say that. I think I had two a couple of years ago. I think now it's going to be more so maybe every year, every couple of years, but I think they are part of my life. I've learned how to manage them. I kind of sit still. I calm myself down. If I'm driving, I pull over. Whatever way I can try to control it. My dad being gone, I called him kind of my panic attack, anxiety attack whisperer. I'm like, he's gone. Who do I talk to? And so then it shifted to my mom. And she said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I thought, but at least she's trying, because my mom was not big on trying that kind of stuff. And then she passed. So now it's like, okay, you're going to have to learn to manage yourself. And so I do the best I can to just kind of find a quiet spot, manage it myself. And what people don't understand is all of that hoopla about the death of whoever it may be, it dies down. And you're the one stuck sitting in grief. The thing that someone said to me, well, you're a bereavement counselor. You want to be a bereavement coach. I said, no, I don't. I said, the word bereavement is what stops me. Well, what does that mean? I said, the word bereavement is just like statement. It's saying you're bereaving and it's going to stop. Bereavement. That means at some point it stops. I said, so I don't believe in bereavement. I believe you have moments of bereavement and you say, hey, how you doing? And that's the funeral, the memorials, all that stuff. But grief is ongoing. Yes, bereavement stops. So I said, that's why I don't consider myself a bereavement coach, because I know grief keeps going. And so once I understood that, you know, I was trying to give my son a lot of help and he wasn't responsive. And the counselors was like, until he's ready. And that's what people have to do. They have to be ready. But if you don't receive that initial love initially, as far as somebody really showing up for you with your grief, then you are in denial about it yourself. You fight it yourself, that you don't need the help, because our community is very big on saying, you're not over that yet? Why don't you just release a balloon? Did you release a balloon? Like that's going to fix everything that ever happened in your life. You're like, I don't want to release a balloon. I want to talk to somebody. I want to spend time with someone. And so it's rare you find that person. But there's a lot of people that are opening up now. There's a lot of people that are saying, I didn't have that help either. And families are getting a little upset. I was there. No, you weren't. I promise you, you weren't. You may have thought you were, bringing over a catfish dinner and just saying, hey, how you doing? Or saying something less than stellar that doesn't need to be said. Well, you know, he's gone. He wasn't a good husband anyway. You know, whatever people say, those types of things aren't necessary. So I definitely think that for a long time, I didn't grieve. I kind of held it all in until I was kind of like my dam broke, so to speak. It just broke in 2017 or 2016. It broke and I couldn't stop crying. So that was 10 years of me holding everything in. trying to hold it together, trying to be a mom to this kid over here and help hold him together. Because he was even like, crying doesn't do anything, Mom. I'm like, yeah, it really does. And so when that seed broke is when I had to decide to manage my grief. And from that point, I got into some grief groups. I got into some grief places that dealt with grief that could help me. And I could just hear my voice. And I was always shocked when I would go to these things and there'd be 4 people there. I'm like, nobody else is having grief?
Yeah.
These are free things. Why aren't you using this stuff?
Yeah.
And I'm in there pouring my guts out, but I could go home and live a little bit better, breathe a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I'd be shocked that no one would come. Even at my church, it'd be the same 3 or 4 people. And I remember someone said, well, you all just live in your grief. You show up here every month. If this is going to help me manage my grief so that I'm not a crying person having extensive panic attacks and help me be a better parent, and it's free, and my church says you got an hour and a half to do whatever you got to do in that room, why wouldn't I take it? And there's more places in churches that have it as well, but it's just throwing that out there that we're so accustomed to not only mismanaging the grief, we're accustomed to pretending we're too good to need that help.
Yeah. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. You're correct. Troia, what are some things that we should not say to someone who is grieving? Because I know I want to ask Eleanor that as well. Troia, let's hear it from you first.
You know, the universe, and again, I grew up Baptist. But I tell people, I said, if they ask me what's your denomination, my mother's side of the family was Pentecostal, my father's side is Baptist. So I call myself a Pentabaptist. But I go to a non-denominational church at the moment. But the universal thing that everybody says is to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. God loved them best. That's why he brought them home. All those things are true, but I don't want to hear it. Not today. Today, I just want to be, and so now the way I minister to people, even at funerals, is a lot different. I acknowledge your pain. It's okay not to be okay. And Eleanor hit it on the nose when she said people are like, you're not over it? No, I'm not over it. My best friend of 25 years is gone within an hour or so of us talking, where he nor God had a conversation with me about him leaving, because I would have said, hey, no. Who's going to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking stupid and I'm talking to you while you're driving? Who's going to call me at 9 o'clock with the old crazy Mexican voice because he's just being silly? Or who's going to tell me all of these crazy stories? No one asked me that. Or like I tell people, I said, I understand my grandmom and I understand my mentor, both of them. My grandma was older and my mentor had been sick for many, many years. But then when somebody said to me, I want to fill the void where your best friend has gone. I said, is that a real question? Is that a real statement? How are you going to know? And I went off, and I felt badly, but not really, because they don't understand. And I think people just don't know what to say. And again, in our community, we're just so conditioned to say, you know, and with God, all things are possible. And he sent a comforter. He did all those things. But right now, I don't want to hear any of it. And we don't allow people not to want to hear any of that. So they want to push on to us all of this foolishness. Like I talked to somebody who lost a child, and they're like, well, you have another child. So, you know, pour all your love into that child. What? Really? Yes, I don't love this child any differently that they're here, but I still need to honor my child that's not here. Even with this a best friend, if you have somebody a friend that is still living, but the relationship is not there, you still lose that. Well, they were no good for you anyway. They may not have been. However, I had a relationship with them. It wasn't always good. I mean, it wasn't always bad, and I have the right to grieve the loss of that person no longer being here, even if they're still walking on this earth. I still have the right to do that. And you know, even with little people, your mommy, your daddy, or your cousin, or your brother, they're in a better place, and God, and there's time for all of that. There really is time for all of that, but there's also time and to say, sweetie, it's okay for you not to be okay today. It's okay for you not to be okay tomorrow. Eleanor speaks how her husband, they were married for 20 years. How do you expect someone to say, after being with someone for 20 plus years, that they should get over it in 20 days? Or my favorite, you have a whole 4 days of bereavement and then you got to go back to work. I can't speak of any other country. I just know in America. And for me, when my best friend died, I mean, I had an amazing manager. She was amazing. I didn't even get that. There is no bereavement for a best friend. There is no bereavement for anyone outside of a husband, a spouse, a sibling, or a parent, or a grandparent. But I had to function. Even when my dog died, there was nothing for me to figure out when my dog died. I had to go back to work, and then someone said something about their dog, and I was like, I have to go because I'm in full tears. And they're like, Troy, what's wrong? I said, my dog, I just buried my dog yesterday. I can't have this conversation. And people are like, well, it's just a dog. No. He was a part of my family. And I just think people, you know, and Eleanor hit it on the nail on the head. People are just not comfortable with someone else's grief. So the easiest thing to do is to exit stage left. They're crying. I don't want to do this. They're strong. You're in a moment. It's like, I may be strong, but I'm broken right now. Can you help me with that? And I think that's the biggest thing that we miss, that people are hurting, and we just want to get everything. We've said it. We want to get them to the repast, and then they're out of our sight.
Wow.
And then we don't have to worry about seeing them cry. We don't have to worry about having somebody call us and say, I'm just, and again, I used to say the universal lie, call me if you need me. That's the biggest lie. I'm here if you need me. And then, like Eleanor explained it, like so eloquently, when we do reach out, it's chirps, it's silence, you hear nothing, or she's calling again. So yeah, I think the biggest thing that people do not need to say anymore is they're in a better place. At least not for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Or maybe just don't. And I say and I say that and I'll say that lightly, because I am a minister, and I know that's something that people say. Yes, they absolutely, they are with God, and I believe that if whatever, you know, they are in a better place. However, in my mind right now, and where I feel they're the better places for them to be here with me. The better place is for me to be able to pick up my phone and say, hey, what's going on? I'm having, you know, that's in my mind at that moment, until I can get to a place where I personally can say, yes, they are in a better place. Yes, my grandma was a little bit sick. Yes, my mentor was sick. Yes, they're no longer suffering. They're no longer feeling these things. But until I get there, don't keep ramming that down my mouth and down my throat and expecting me to eat liver, and I hate liver. So if that was you know what I mean? That tastes like liver to me, and I just don't, and I choose not to. But I had to get there. I wasn't always there, because I also used the same language. But now walking in the space of being a grief counselor, a grief coach, I see things and talk differently now.
What about you, Eleanor? Give me, because I know you have some scenarios as well. What are some things that you think we should not say? Because we need to be educated, and I'm very honest about that. We need to be educated about grief. And I think it's something that we usually don't talk about, as you all mentioned. And I'm talking about the whole education drive, especially now in this era where we have a number of people dying faster than before. That's what we will see. So to me, there should be a huge campaign, an education campaign, about how to help someone during a period of grief. Because the truth is, many of us don't know. Like for me, I don't know, right? I see my husband going through his season. To me, he handled the first year well. to me, I started to see that change only in 2020. But thinking back in hindsight, there were signals, but I didn't know. I didn't know how to deal with it. And is it that I purposefully didn't know? It's just I really don't know because I wasn't taught how to handle something like that. How to help someone, what to say and what not to say. So you all are actually teaching me right now, during this interview. You all are teaching me here. So Eleanor, tell us, what are some things that we should not say?
Well, I definitely am in agreement with Troia about the first one. They're in a better place. That needs to be kicked and shelved and put in a freezer somewhere. Just because it's been the language of people or culture for a long time doesn't mean it's ever been the right language.
That's right.
So that is just something that's generationally been passed down, and it needs to go. There's no comfort in it, and it never really has been. And it doesn't matter about anything in the Bible at that moment. You've lost someone. To say someone is in a better place, it makes you feel less than who you are. It makes you feel like, well, we weren't good enough to be with. He or she wasn't happy here. It really does take a chunk of you, and people don't know that. So I agree with that. Other things, you'll get married again. What? I just lost my husband. I don't want. Please don't tell someone the minute they lose one mate, you're young. You'll meet someone else. You'll have a new husband in a year. I literally had someone tell me that. I was like, huh? And you are so shocked by the things people say. The child thing. Oh, you heard the ludicrous things people would say. Well, at least the child that died was close to his dad. So the two people died together that were the right ones. And you have your baby and you're close to your baby. So see, God worked that out. I literally had someone say that to me. And I was like, I was actually close to both my children.
Say that to me?
Yeah, someone actually
say that to me and leave my home.
I'm trying to fix my face. I'm literally trying to fix my face. What?
Well, I couldn't do too much. I was in the chair getting my hair done at the time. So I'm like, what? And you don't want to move your head because I'm like, let this woman finish my hair so I can get out of here. I really didn't say too much after that. I think she kind of knew she made a boo-boo, but it was so completely awkward the rest of the time. And I just was like, yeah, I guess so. That made no sense. Yes, my older son did a lot with his dad because he was older. My younger son did a lot with his dad too. We all did, so we were a family. So I was like, what in the world? So I think people need to gauge what they're saying before they say it. I had, and this came directly from my mother-in-law, and I'm going to say it because these are some things that people say in their own, levels of wherever they may be. She said, well, you at least got one more at home. She was talking about my son. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. But see, you have to watch what you say, because I tell people a lot, what you say in grief can come back and get you too. Karma's a beast, because within about a few years later, she lost her oldest son. She had lost my husband, which was the middle son. And I wanted to say in my, you have that petty moment. I wanted to say, if I could just call her and go, well, at least you got one. But I said, I'm not going to do that. But my pettiness was on that level, like, because I felt like, imagine if someone came and said the same foolishness to you. So I would say whatever the loss is, it's especially if someone, okay, my son was 14, but imagine someone that has lost an infant. Please don't tell them, you can get pregnant again soon. You'll have another baby. You don't know what transpired. They may have had things taken out, emergency surgeries. They may never be able to have another infant. So people just kind of step on these landmines, and you're supposed to take the explosion. Yeah. And it's really not fair. Yeah. It's not right. That's so good. I would say definitely think before you speak. Or this is what I tell people. I just want to love you, hug you, whatever you need. I'll try my best to be there. And, I don't know what to say in this moment, but I just try to love on them in that moment versus digging out things that I know nothing about. You have people that are angry at funerals and memorials and repasts, and you don't know why. You don't know, it's like, oh, I know you love him. I know you miss him. The guy could have beat her for 20 years. You don't know. So I definitely encourage people to just Either silence is golden, hugs are great. I've held someone's hand in grief, and I've had them call me months later and say, "You just standing there holding my hand kept me from completely breaking down, and you weren't talking." And that helped me just to keep my thoughts.
Yeah.
People think you need this running dialogue, and you don't. And even with the accident, it was kind of like, who was driving? What happened? What difference does it make? They're gone.
Yeah.
And so people want to keep crossing these thresholds thinking you need conversation, and you don't. So I would definitely say, let people know, hey, I'm here. Do you want to talk about anything? If they say no, that's fine. Because even if they want to talk in that moment, it just may not be able to come out. Like with your husband and his brother. It's not necessarily denial. It's just hard to dig in that space and be like, I miss him. He's gone. He's not here. And even when we lose things, jobs and cars and different things we may have had for a long time, we think that's not an effect, or losing a home you've had. All those things affect people in different ways. So I think COVID is also a great effector of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have lost things due to losing jobs and positions. They've lost their home. They're now living in apartments and different things that you never had to do before. You're losing friendships that you never thought you would lose because it never may have been as tight as you thought it was, because now you can't talk to one another like you used to, and people don't pick up the phone like you would think. So definitely I would say COVID has changed a lot of things, and I think it's causing people to have greater respect for losing someone, because it took away that chunk of non-caring ways people handle it. And so now people are admitting, I need somebody to talk to. I didn't get any type of closure. I didn't have a funeral. I didn't have this. And I said, when we started having the virtual funerals, like with my mom, I was like, I'm so hoping this isn't the new way of blowing people off. You have the virtual funeral, you talk for a few minutes after, then you don't talk to each other again. And I'm seeing that it's kind of causing people to reach out a little bit more and a little bit better. So yeah. I'm happy about that. But I would say just definitely watch what you say. Think about it. It's not your place to analyze whatever happened to the person. It's not your place to decide. They have to have a conversation about it, because sometimes people try to push you into your grief right at that moment. You can cry right now. Come on, hug me. We can go ahead and cry together. And you're standing there going, I don't want to cry right now. That may not be the place or the time.
Yeah.
Because they feel like I'm offering you my version of grief help. You got to take it right this moment and do what I say. That's not helpful either. So don't try to force the person. And they may not want to hug you either. I've had people go, no, if I hug you, I'm going to just burst into tears. I would tell people, if you touch me, and they're more like, if you touch me, I won't get up off the floor. I just knew I was going to fall apart. So it was like, please don't touch me. So people thought I was being standoffish at my husband and my son's memorial. I wasn't. I knew any type of touch was just going to destroy me, because I was so in need of love. I was so in need of touch. So I knew the minute someone touched me, I wasn't going to make it through. And so we can't do anything about how people perceive how we're handling what we're handling. But I would just say, definitely watch what you're saying. For the people on here to see this, think before you speak. And you're not required to speak. Contrary to popular belief, you're not required to speak. I've done a lot of repasts and events. All I do is give you a plate of food, anything you need to step away, hold your hand, walk you somewhere. Because sometimes people just need to get away from the crowds and just say, okay. But now, what do you do when you turn off the Zoom and there's nobody there? And so I think we need to be offering more help. I am in the process of going to start trying to offer something at least once a month for people. And people are like, that's morbid. And that's where people get lost. That's morbid. I said, no, it's not. You can have conversations about grief where you never stop laughing.
Yeah.
You can have conversations about grief that lift you up and help you to soar. And we've got to start doing that. And I'm like Troy, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to make the wheel work a little bit better.
Yeah, agreed. This conversation needs to be had a little more often.
Yes.
I really applaud you all so much for your transparency and, really helping other women and other people, not just women, but people as a whole, go through grief and their grieving period, how to cope. Also, not just helping those who are grieving, but teaching those who what to do and what not to do. I think that's a big part that needs to, how should I say, be emphasized. So that way it can make that person who's grieving, who's experiencing the loss, go through their season a bit easier. When to speak, when not to speak, and when you have the opportunity to speak, what to say and what not to say. You know, a lot of sensitization needs to happen. But I believe that, as you rightly say, COVID has pushed us to a place whereby we are now having these conversations. So even though we are not there in person to embrace and to rub your back and, you know, to hold someone's hands, COVID has now allowed us to make an extra effort to call someone or to message someone, to check in some other way or the other. Because if there wasn't COVID, we won't be having this discussion, Lee. We won't. This video would not have gone viral, you understand, if there wasn't COVID. So therefore, we are seeing the benefits with this, you know, this virus coming on stream. However, I think now it's for us to continue to capitalize on it and really get our voices heard. What you all are doing is a tremendous job, lady. A tremendous job, you know, and I pray that God strengthen you all. Because I could just imagine, I don't know, but I could just imagine whilst you're counseling someone or coaching someone, you could probably end up going back into your, you know, your period, and you remember and you start to cry again. So I could just only imagine whilst you're helping someone trying to forget, certain triggers might actually make you remember, right? So I pray that God give you all grace and strength even in this part of your ministry, your calling in this season. So please tell us, Troia, how can our audience get in contact with you?
Listen, I am very easy to get in contact with. I am everywhere at justtroia.com. My email is hello@justtroia.com. And if you go to my website, like Eleanor was stating, I actually we started grief support sessions as well, and work with one-on-one. We work with individuals in business and groups in business as businesses as well, because you don't think of grief as, but COVID is forcing the corporate business place to think about grief as well, because their employees, everybody's home. So we have that support, and we primarily work with we work with veterans, COVID, those who are COVID, and of course those who have lost a loved one as well. And the other one we do is as teachers. So we please feel free to reach out to me at everywhere at justtroia.com. And I will say this, and then I'll be quiet. The name of my healing center is Good Grief, and that's on purpose, because the only grief that's not good is when you don't do it. The only bad grief is when you don't do it. So when we say good grief, we're not teaching you how to get over it. We're teaching you how to live through it. Yes. And that's the most important thing. The healing journey begins when you let it out. So please, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, thank you. And what about you, Eleanor? How can we get in contact with you?
I'm pretty easy. Everything's under Bigger Fish to Fry Coaching, or you can go to my website at www.eleanorward.com. But everything is under the Bigger Fish to Fry Coaching umbrella, and I'm accessible at either one of those for people to talk to. And I want to say, you know, no matter what people think, you can't get over grief. It's not possible. I recently started a keynote called It Doesn't Exist, the 6 stages of grief. And I started that because someone walked up to me. I get the funkiest stuff said to me. Never had met me. This was at an event I was at 2 years ago, and said, asked me some questions. And I said, well, you know, I lost my husband a few years ago. I don't even know how we got on the subject, and God does things on purpose. And he goes, well, what stage of grief are you in? And I was like, what? And I said, I'm not in any stage of grief. I said, that doesn't exist. And I was offended, and I think he knew it. And he finally came back and said, and later on, as the event went on, I was a vendor at that event. He said, well, I'm sorry. I said, yeah, you don't walk up to people and ask them that. I said, but no, I said, that doesn't exist. And he said, well, you should write a book about that. And I said, well, I'll think about that. So now I'm going to spend some time on that. But I started making that a keynote. It doesn't exist. If you need help, call me, call just Troia. Like she said, you can find her. But like I said, you can find me at Bigger Fish to Fry Coaching and EleanorWard.com. So we're here for you guys.
Thank you.
We were called. Listen, we were called to this. Yes. Not everybody was. Not every. You can be chosen, but I think you have to be for this particular. And I really am going to shut up. But to be in this space, it takes a certain type of empathy to be with people. And you mentioned it. How do we go through it without revisiting our trauma or our grief or our loss? That's what makes us. I think, and I can speak for, I'm gonna speak for Troia, but I think for those of us who work in the grief space, because we have been in touch with our grief, we're able to help others pull them out. And yes, it can get hard, but God has given, I tell people all the time, my parents were pastors, and I say God has given them a measure of grace to be a pastor. I think God has given us a measure of grace to walk in this space, so that we don't continue to re-traumatize our own selves, but use our experience to help others where people just are not, and they weren't.
Yeah.
And I want to say real quick, jumping on what Troia is saying as well, sympathy is not empathy. I really want to make that clear to people. The reason there are two different words, and people think pathy on both ends means something. It doesn't mean anything. Sympathy means, I'm sorry that happened to you, and I feel bad it happened to you, but thank God it didn't happen to me. That's sympathy. And that's as far as it really goes. And you can tell people that have sympathy. Empathy is that true feeling of, oh my goodness, I can understand how you feel. I can feel it, and it's taking me to a place of wanting to comfort you. And that's one way I'm not triggered. Yeah. It's like, I remember not having anything but false comforters around me. Yeah. And so I want to feel with you and be with you and help you through this so that you can have a life again. And sympathy, I'm going to tell you, sympathizers, they run far and they run fast. And those are you got to call me people. Why didn't you tell me you needed help? And so those people are never really helpful. And empathizers usually right there quietly, openly, right by your side, trying their best to do everything. And it can sometimes get to you. I don't care who you are. You're going to have moments when you're in the grief space and helping that you're going to cry, that you're going to be like, oh my goodness, you're going to want to come through the screen and help somebody. But you being where you are able to pull yourself up and get to helping the person. You're like, okay, let me shake this off. I'm supposed to be the helper. So for me, I can quickly kind of say, okay, we gotta get it together and get to the helping of the person. So I think that's something that we have to keep in our minds, that, we have to learn the difference, sympathy versus empathy.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. I really appreciate this. This conversation, I need you all again. We need to have a part 2 in this. This is really important. It's so imperative. More than just being a business owner, more than just trying to find income, increasing sales. It's this conversation here, our mental health, our happiness. We need to have a part 2, ladies. I don't know about you, but we need to have a part 2.
I'm okay with that. Because I think Eleanor is the same way. We want to normalize what has not been normal for so long. But even in business ownership, people can feel grief. They didn't get the contract. The business is not going the way that they would like it to go. All of that is considered a loss. So
Gotcha.
Anytime.
I'm ready too. And I would say this too. It also can trigger mental illness. A lot of patients that used to come into the clinic, it was simply because of a loss that they just could not bounce back from, and didn't know where to go or who to reach out to. And so it can trigger manic depressive disorders. It can trigger bipolarism that may be dormant, that may never come to light until you have a really bad episode. So people sometimes think, oh, they had it all along, they were crazy. No, they were battling something so horrible, it triggered something to happen. And so a lot of our people that are battling with mental illness, it's really tied to their grief.
Yeah.
And so that's just something we need to consider as well. Like, we're ignoring so much, we're triggering other issues, because when you feel overwhelmed with grief, you get sick, and that's the truth. And so, I'm ready whenever you guys are.
Whenever you are, let me know.
Definitely. So thank you all for tuning in. And I trust that you ladies, you all got valuable information as well. Get in contact with Troia and Eleanor. They are ready to help you and your family get through your period of grief successfully. Okay? So have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.